Okay, we will now look at Pakistan's constitutional provisions for education. What does the Constitution of Pakistan say about education for its citizens? And this is put forward in 1973, well many years after being independent. And what the Constitution says is, the state shall remove illiteracy and provide free and compulsory secondary education within minimum possible period. This is Article 37B. There are two things in this article. Remove illiteracy. But how is it going to go? What steps are we going to take? And I think those steps have never been really formulated. And the key thing in this article of the Constitution is it says compulsory and free secondary education. So it's actually better than the conventions that we looked at previously that talked about free and compulsory elementary or primary education. The Constitution of Pakistan provides free and compulsory secondary education that is up to grade 10, metric level, and our students are not getting it. Boys or girls, it makes no difference. But if the Constitution provides it, for it, who is responsible for making sure that that actually happens and is translated into a reality? Then we have Article 25A. As part of the Constitutional Amendment number 18, Article 25A has now been added to Chapter 1 of the Constitution, which is titled as Fundamental Rights, the basic rights of every citizen of Pakistan. The state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 5 to 16 years in such manner as may be determined by law. Now, from 5 to 16 is kindergarten through matric. That's the age span. And it is again a constitutional guarantee. The Constitutional guarantees this, but what government have come forward and made that into a reality. And this education up to the secondary level is now classified as a fundamental right under Article 25A. Are we getting it? But the article is a little loose. There's some vagueness in the article, determined by law. Which law? What law is going to come and determine what that education is supposed to be? And I think that's the job that the Constitution left open to the policymakers of the country, to see what sorts of education, what kinds of education should be made available to these children. So, enforcement of Article 25A. It is a very critical article in terms of education. At present, even after the abolition of school fees and provision of free textbooks, that was done some years ago, that no fees will be charged and free textbooks will be provided to students. Despite of that, there are more than 7 million children of school age not going to school. That's not a happy note. Even though now we are saying parents don't have to pay fees, parents don't have to pay for the books, we will provide that free of cost to all our students. But what the government forgets, what the policymakers forgets is there are other hidden charges in education. Okay, you're providing the books, the textbooks, okay? Where are the copies and the paper coming from? Where are the pencils, erasers, and those other instruments coming from? Where is the lunch money coming from? Where is the transport to take these children to school and bring them back? Where is the uniform coming from? And so on and so forth. When most families, especially in the rural areas, are living below the poverty line, even if you're not charging fees and even if you provide free textbooks, they are not able to bear the cost of the additional hidden things that we somehow don't see. Alarming figures suggest that unless concrete steps are taken to ensure provision of complete free education to all children, Pakistani children will continue to be deprived of their basic right to education. Now, where and when is anyone going to take notice of this? Where and when is anyone going to look and say, these children need an education? And charging no fees and providing free textbooks is not enough. What about the other supplies? Even basic things like pencils and erasers, paper, writing material, copies, those kinds of things. We're not even talking right now of computers and technology and those kinds of fancy things that the privileged class of Pakistani society, those children can afford and are going and receiving a good education. But that's not it. That's one segment, small segment of Pakistani society receiving good quality education. This should be and is the right of every single Pakistani child. The following prerequisites are essential if Article 25A is to be enforced in letter and spirit. We will need to look at. So somebody has at least begun to do some homework and look at what can be done. So here are the prerequisites. Number one is the legislation. Further legislation is needed to define and elaborate different modalities and rules for provision of free and compulsory education. Simply stating it in a document as an article, free and compulsory education, without giving any of the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, how is that going to happen? What steps should be taken? Over what time frame should these steps be taken? How do we make sure that children are in schools? And begin to understand the last piece of the article, as determined by law. That's the job of the policymakers. That's law. That's their job. Their job is to make law, to make policy. Where are those policies coming from? Provision of additional financial resources. As I said earlier, no tuition fee and free textbooks is not enough. There are other things. Do we have transport? Do we have infrastructure? Do we have schools? Do we have furniture? The kids can't sit on the floor and learn and work all the time. Do we have trained teachers? Do we have the necessary writing equipment? Do we have the color pencils? Do we have the basic paper and things that students will need? Do we have food and lunch for them? If children leave home early and they haven't had breakfast, they are not going to be able to survive and work in a classroom unless they get something to eat. So are schools providing nutritional snacks or milk or something that will enable the students to get their energy back and want to work in a classroom? So these hidden costs will somehow have to be addressed so that people and even parents begin to understand that, yes, this is benefiting their children, actually our children. What incentives are we going to give? Why should children go to school? Are we guaranteeing them jobs? Are we guaranteeing them a lifestyle? Are we guaranteeing them a status? Are we guaranteeing them anything? So, about 30% of people in Pakistan live below the poverty line. That doesn't mean that 70% above the poverty line are all the richy rich. They're not. Okay? So how do you address this disparity? How do you bring a balance between the haves and the have-nots? It can happen through every child receiving a good, solid, quality education that will guarantee a much better future for these children than their parents or families have had. Compulsory dimension. What does compulsory mean? Coming to school, okay, physically you are there. Mentally, where are you? Is that enough? Just to mark attendance and say you were in school? You came, you showed up? That's not enough. The dimension of compulsory has to be explained. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, and Article 25A of the Constitution contains the provision of making elementary education compulsory. What steps are we going to take? Are we going to take any steps? When are we going to take those steps? And how are we going to make sure that all our children are in school, compulsory and free, without any financial liabilities? That's the key. Motivational drive. What is the motivation that's going to drive this whole process of making sure that there is free and compulsory primary elementary education for our students? Even after legislation and provision of incentives for education, factors like lack of awareness, a lot of times, especially if parents are uneducated and even the extended family is largely uneducated, awareness needs to be created. Why will your daughter, why will your son, who will need to go to school, be a better human being, lead a better life, will do something better, will be a productive citizen of this country, will not be a liability on this nation, and will contribute to the further development of Pakistan? That is what is needed if the reality is to dawn soon.